They were taking children out of Boys Town orphanages and foster homes and driving them to Sioux City, Iowa, 184 miles away, placing them in private jets, flying them to Washington, D.C. for sex orgies with Congress and senators and dignitaries. And I've covered that in my intelligence report, by the way. So what does that mean? Well, a guy named Rusty Nelson was taking pictures of them while they were doing this sort of thing. And Rusty would take a picture of them for them because they kept track of the film. And then he would sneak his own film in because he figured he'd need insurance down the road, and he was right. And so he had these pictures of these dignitaries who were involved in these nefarious sexual activities. Congressmen, senators, as I said. Now, Rusty was asked to participate in a sexual act with a man, and he wasn't any part of that. So he went out a bathroom window in a motel and made his way back to Norfolk, Nebraska. And his granddad had an old a farm there that was abandoned, and he stayed on the farm for a while. And the FBI came around to Rusty's parents, and the mother very naively said, "Oh, Rusty's over at such and such a farmhouse." The FBI went over and interviewed Rusty at the farmhouse, and Rusty says it's time to take off, and he took off, of course. Now, before this happened, during the investigation, Gary Caradora was an investigator for the Senate committee, Schmidt and DeCamp. And he made contact with Rusty. Rusty was in Arizona. And Rusty said, "Meet me in Chicago." He didn't want to meet Gary Caradora in Phoenix. And so he met him in Chicago, Gary did. And Rusty turned over the pictures of him having sex with some of these dignitaries in Washington, D.C., senators, congressmen, so what? White House people, okay, use your own imagination. And Gary Caradora made the mistake of calling Lawrence Schmidt, "I have the smoking gun." He had his own airplane, and that night after the All-Star game, he had his 12-year-old boy with him. They got in Gary's plane, and over Aurora, Illinois, the plane exploded. Gary died. Pictures were all over the place. First person at the scene was the sheriff, deputy sheriff. He picked up the pictures. The FBI agent came along, grabbed the pictures, said, "Keep your mouth shut." He apparently didn't keep his mouth shut because a year later his wife was murdered, by the way. The farmer said that he saw an explosion, and the government said that the plane just fell apart. Okay. The rear seat was never recovered. Gary Caradora's briefcase was never recovered, and the pictures, who knows what the FBI did with them. I did everything I could to get my hands on that airplane. And I was going to have it examined by a forensic specialist, because if there was a bomb on that plane, a forensic expert could tell you that there was a bomb, and they could classify the bomb. I couldn't get the plane because it was being held in a military base. Now, why would the military take a plane being flown by a civilian and take control of it? Cover up, no question about it. But anyway, that's of the number back there. If I had to guess, just from my research and my experience, I'd say maybe 35 good people back there, including Ron Paul. 35 out of the whole bunch.
That is senators and congressmen.
That's what I would guess. I have no way of knowing, but I know that. Well, look how they've been voting. Look at them voting. They voted to extend the Patriot Act, to make parts of the Patriot Act permanent.
That brings up a second question. It's so big, and it has so many tentacles and so many parts of the government and the military and corporations. How did it get like this? You've been thinking about this for a long time. I've only known about this for the past couple of years. I wonder if you could put it in perspective somehow.
Well, I've been involved in researching this for 30 years. And piece by piece, it fell in order, you know. First this, this, and this. I was given a lecture in the late 90s, probably middle 90s, in Las Vegas. And after the lecture, a fellow came up to me and handed me his book, Pawns in the Game. And he said, this is what it's all about. Now, I didn't know anything about Pawns in the Game. I knew very little about the Illuminati. Pawns in the Game is available through me, by the way. And I urge you to buy it. That and the Franklin Coverup book by John DeCamp. And these are both the most dynamite, powerful books that I've ever read. And that's how I learned about the Illuminati. I mean, I'd heard about them, but I really knew about them after that. I learned about the 25 goals to take over the world. And it got so big and it goes so well organized that I can go from Los Angeles tonight to Nebraska and have a surveillance on me and have somebody come into my house in Nebraska or here in LA. I've had surveillances on me in Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, Ohio, Utah, California, Oregon. I mean, they've got a network of people of an army. It's army. And what it is primarily military intelligence. Remember Eisenhower warned us about military-industrial complex. Remember? He knew. Jack Kennedy knew.